they say these things, right? One's more important than the other, that the golfer's more important or the equipment's more important. And it's always both. I've never seen a golfer play golf without equipment, and I've never seen a stand bag just walking down the fairway without a golfer, you know?
Hello friends, we're back with episode 44 of No Putts Given, and today the boss is away, so we're gonna have fun breaking down the top 5 golf equipment myths, and then we're introducing a new section of the website, and then we're giving you a chance to participate in MyGolfSpy testing. So guys, let's get it.
44.
No Putts Given is powered by MyGolfSpy, the most extensive reviews in golf. Before you buy, MyGolfSpy. 9 million readers do it every year. Check us out.
This is the Icky Woods edition.
All right, like I said, welcome back. We've got Tony, Harry, and Chris. I'm Miranda. Adam's not here this week, guys, so are we going to talk about him?
He's living in a van down by the river, right?
I think it's a little fancier than that, but, you know, we could go that way.
Well, he's living in an RV down by the ocean.
Yes.
It's more accurate.
Not quite so bad.
Really classing it up a little bit with that, I guess.
So how's everybody been this week? Good?
Not too bad.
Yeah, took the family camping. Yeah.
You are also in a van down by the river, right?
I was in a tent down by on a mountain. I was in a tent on a mountain.
So you went real camping, like tent and sleeping bags?
Yeah, I don't do this glamping stuff. This is like real Colorado camping, you know, like tents.
I stay at a 3-star hotel.
When I want to rough it.
Yeah, Tony's camping rhymes with Schmilton.
Really? I thought he would have been at the Lariat.
Yeah, could be.
All right, guys. Well, like I said, we're going to have a little fun today and break down the top 5 golf equipment myths. So I've got a couple lined up for us. And if you disagree with me and you have more entries, by all means, cut me off and let me know. But the number one that I have here is that newer is better. And I think this is a free-for-all. Any of you guys can take this one. But why would that be a myth?
It's almost one of those myths that's like almost so commonplace that people stop trying to think about it a little bit, right? Like it's one of those ones I think where there's some nuance to it because each year something is better, right? They can't come out with a product and say, oh, this product is just the same and equally as performance oriented as our last 3 editions, and here's to justify a price increase or something like that. So it's almost so commonplace within the industry that people kind of stop thinking about it a little bit. And I think part of the reason companies can get away with that to some degree is new equipment is probably better in some way, in some fashion, by some marginal amount for some player.
Well, wouldn't it also have something to do, let's use drivers, for example, when you bought your last driver? So say you bought a driver last year. Is it necessary that you have the newest model every year?
No.
Not necessarily. I would say like 3 to 5 years, right?
That's typically what even the industry will tell you is, you talk to the R&D guys, it takes us 3 to 5 years to make significant changes. Golfers love to draw parallels with the auto industry for whatever reason, right? And so if you want to think about it in that context, like a car, the Honda Ridgeline that came out the year after mine wasn't significantly different. It was a new feature here or there, probably the same engine, same performance, just a different bell and whistle combination more than anything else. Now, 3 years from now, that truck's probably going to look quite a bit different than the one I bought, and that's true for a lot of golf equipment. And I think probably the best way to think about it, and Chris touched on this a little bit too. I have a buddy in the industry who's been in there a long, long time, seen just about everything. What he's told me, and for any given golfer, a new piece of equipment is either going to be better, worse, or the same. And it really does come down.
Those are the 3 options,
right? But it's going to be one of those 3 things. And newer, I like to say, is different, right? And sometimes for you as an individual, newer is going to be better. Sometimes newer is going to be the same, and unfortunately, sometimes newer is going to be worse because when they move around centers of gravity and tweak performance attributes, you may have a driver where what becomes the old model was pretty much ideal for you, and those tweaks that they made to make it better for a segment of golfers actually makes it worse for you, and that can happen. And I think that's just really how it is. There are no guarantees.
No, I think it's fun too. Look on Champions Tour if you want to look at the professional level, or look at elite amateur players. Look at Division 1 players that are super good players. Even look at guys at your or gals at your club that are maybe some of the better players, and look in their bags. And it's really interesting to see what equipment they're playing. I remember looking. This was maybe last year or the year before, but man, there were a lot of 2016 TaylorMade M2 drivers on the Champions Tour, because it was a great model, and people get comfort with that. And then, 3-5 years later, so that'd be about now, right? Maybe Sim gives them enough different performance. Maybe it's a Tour Edge product with their new line, the 220 stuff, that gives them some type of performance advantage. But probably make an argument between 2016 M2 and 2020 now, probably not a lot of differences.
You alluded to my next question a little bit, Chris, but can you think of any one piece of equipment that has outlasted the technology changes that you would never let out of your bag, or maybe consumers haven't?
Ooh, that's a good one. My hunch would be it would tend to be in that 3-wood kind of hybrid space, or certain irons. I mean, we've seen this with especially guys that play a traditional cavity back, like a player's cavity back iron, or a true muscle back iron. We've seen Adam Scott stick with Titleist models in the muscle back area that are 8, 10, 12 years old. Webb Simpson, the same. You could make an argument Tiger's irons now, even with TaylorMade, fundamentally hasn't changed a whole lot since MP29, MP14 stuff with Mizuno that he was playing into the Nike stuff, etc. So
yeah, blades don't change.
I mean, if people find a 3-wood that they really, really like, because really, other than your driver, all your different clubs should have kind of a speed limit. And if you find a club that fits that tool, that does exactly what you want it to do, and the combination of hitting it off the tee and off the deck and the shots you try to play with it, I would imagine you'd see some pretty old 3-woods in players' bags where they don't upgrade even every 3 to 5 years, maybe 7 to 10.
That's the one in my bag that tends to be the stickiest as well. And I mean, you guys know I move stuff in and out of the bag at an alarming rate when different things come in to play with. But 3-woods tend to stick around. Like, I'll get 2 to 3 years out of a 3-wood, and I know that's a little bit atypical. Like, most people will get more, but when you consider like the volume of equipment that we're essentially supposed to try and test out and play with, for me to go, yeah, no, this one is not open for conversation, that's a rarity. And like I said, that is the 3-wood spot in the bag.
Harry, how about you? Any Old Faithfuls?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's a lot of comfort. If I remember hitting a similar shot, and I hit a shot that is really, really good over and over and over again, I'm gonna go to that when I'm on that tee, and I know that feeling of familiarity, and it gives me confidence when I set out, which is weird because we know that it doesn't correlate to performance. But if it's anything to do with equipment, I'm kind of a shaft guy. Like, I have this, yes, Tony. I tried out the Ventus Black in my 3-wood, and it didn't quite outperform my Al Dealer Proto by U shaft that was 10, 15 years old. It just kicks at the right point, and it's just smooth. I can feel everything, every layer of that shaft, and I'm more confident on that than I was the Ventus. So I went back to that. Now, granted, the Ventus is a great shaft, but this one just fit me perfectly. Now, the things I would change is wedges. That's definitely one I would change probably every year. It all depends on how much you play, because the more you wear down the grooves, the less spin and control you're gonna get on the greens. I think was it Vokey and Tyler said it was 70 rounds or something like that. You start seeing diminishing returns on it.
Yeah, plus or minus 75 rounds, conditions, how much you practice, sandy ranges, this, that. But the difference, right, is changing because something's wearing out as opposed to changing because there's a performance benefit from something new.
Correct, yeah.
Right? So, like, I want to say it was an SM6 model 60 degree that Brooks Koepka was playing, and they just could not get it out of his bag. He loved that particular grind, loft, bounce combination, and the SM7 didn't have it. SM8, I don't know if he's transitioned to that in his 60 degree yet or not, but certainly wearing something down and replacing it. Great example would be Daniel Berger, right? He won a couple weeks ago, and he has the TaylorMade CBs in his bag from, again, I don't know, I want to say 2012. 11, 12, we'd have to check, long time ago. And he's saying, hey, I'm on eBay. I'm buying up every single set. These are the best irons ever made. And what he's not saying in there, but is implicit, is these are the best irons made for me. And I found the balance of feel, forgiveness, trajectory, etc. It works for me. So I'm going to go buy as many of these things as I can on eBay. And I'm going to run them until there's something that's so obviously better. I have to switch. I'm implored to switch. There's a lot of those stories that are out there. And again, this guy that, probably could get a little bit of money from an equipment deal if he wanted to with irons, but not interested.
All right, let's move on to number 2. Longer is better.
You guys look at the test data, right, Tony? I know, with irons specifically, right? Like, is it true that the longest irons tend to be the highest performing irons, or is it not true?
Irons are tricky, and we've sort of tried to find the right balance in quantifying the distance. I think we've done that for this year. We figured some things out with our iron test where I think we'll do a better job with that, of really understanding if there is a penalty for an iron that is longer, that sort of thing. So, in that respect, traditionally irons that are significantly longer than the average for the category tend to not do particularly well. And usually it's because of jack lofts that don't have the performance accounted for, I guess is how I would phrase that. So for the right type of golfer with the right type of well-designed, strongly lofted off iron, you'll see the high launch and the descent angles you need to hold greens. But some of these are still, where the technology hasn't really kept pace with the bending machine, if you will. So it's just sort of, kind of this, we can hit them a long way, but the launch, the spin characteristics and the descent angles aren't particularly functional.
Well, we talk about with irons specifically, right? Like, Tony, you always mention smaller circles are better. And what we mean by that is, right, measurements of dispersion, both front, back, how far a club goes from its shortest distance to its longest distance on average, but then also right, left dispersion. We tend to think of that somewhat to some degree more as accuracy, right? So if, like, was it last year and the year before, we saw Mizuno irons test super well, and that was because they weren't the longest, but they tended to create the smallest circles for golfers. And if the fact is, if you start hitting certain clubs further, it starts to put pressure on other gaps within your bag. And so I don't know that there's a club that I necessarily want to hit further other than a driver. And even so, not at a certain expensive accuracy. And I think we have numbers on that too, right? Like how much further is actually better with a driver if I'm going to give up some accuracy?
Well, let's simplify this a little bit. Companies know what sells and distance sells. So are they making clubs, whether it be irons, drivers, 3-woods, whatever it may be, are they making them longer in order to make sales, but sacrificing other things like accuracy, like you were saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you talk to them kind of quietly, they will acknowledge this to a degree, especially with the irons, right? You have to keep in mind, right? We'll talk about fitting here in a bit, but as much as we say, hey, you should get fit, and as we're seeing those percentage of golfers who actually do get fit tick up, the reality is the majority of golf equipment sold today is still purchase off the rack, which is either worst case scenarios an eBay purchase, best case in that scenario is a guy goes in and grabs a few clubs that he likes the look of, hits them on a launch monitor, and more often than not buys the one that he hits the farthest. And that's true for drivers, it's true for 3-woods, and it's true for irons as well. So, in the hitting base scenario, and golf companies, like I said, are very aware of this, that in a hitting base scenario, even with an iron, longest wins in terms of that's the one that people are going to take home with them. So there is a bit of an engineering game to try and to win the distance battle. And there's some rumors, for example, that with fitting heads, companies might bend them a degree or two stronger still to again, if you're going to put that in a big box store where fitting sometimes isn't what it is, like we say, like a True Spec, TXG, Cool Clubs, etc. If you can win that way for that kind of golfer, it's not unheard of. So
I think some of them, it depends on what demographic you are. If you're the older generation and you've lost some of the distance that you've had, and you play one of those course sets, you don't need to carry it over bunkers or whatever it is. I think longer is better for them because they can get a little bit of distance that they lost back. It's where you get into carrying bunkers and you have to carry a certain yardage and then hold the green afterwards, I think comes into play where it becomes an issue. But for those courses like a links course where you're trying to run it short of the green and then bounce it up majority of the time, I think that's more of a good option for them.
So our advice to consumers is pay attention to all aspects of a club, not just distance.
Absolutely. And we see, again, the driver test is a great example where the longest club seldom wins. I don't want to say never. We've seen that, but it's really, especially using a strokes gain methodology where you sort of bring an appreciation of the reality that a second shot from the rough is almost invariably more difficult, has a lower success rate, farther proximity to the pin than on average than a second shot from the fairway. If you were to kind of rank, hey, what are the top 10 for distance and the top 10 for fairway percentage, and where do they overlap? That's kind of where we start to see, what we would say is the best performers.
Again, this was a Lou Stagner type stat where if you took an average tour pro on, let's say, a 400-yard par 4, and you take one player in the fairway and another player in the rough, in order for that player in the rough to have the same strokes gained opportunity, basically, they're going to play the hole as well as the person that's playing in the fairway. They had to be like 53 to 58 yards ahead of that person in the fairway.
It's right out of Mark Brody's tables. It's a big number like that. That penalty in terms of, all right, where's the break-even point between in the rough and in the fairway? Like how much longer do I need to be in the rough to offset the fairway benefit? And it's pretty massive. And so when you try and make sense out of what we see in Most Wanted, my takeaway is always, guys, the numbers say longer is better. We all get that, but you're not going to be appreciably longer. You're not going to be 30 yards longer with a TaylorMade or 50 yards longer with a Callaway than you would be with a Cobra or Ping or a Titleist or something like that. And so in that sort of total performance, is this going to lower my scores type of equation? You really probably should weight it heavily towards the straightness of the drives, knowing that on the distance side, you're only going to give up 5 or so yards, give or take, and that's not enough to overcome the difference between being in the fairway a significantly higher percentage of the time.
Yeah, so find the straightest driver you hit the furthest.
Yes.
All right, I like that. So number 3, I think we can debunk this one pretty quickly. Are milled putters better than cast putters?
No.
Number 4.
Yep, that's what I thought. We'll break this down super quickly. The reason is because milled putters are typically more expensive, so people equate cost with quality. But Harry, was the Odyssey Triple Track 2 ball a milled or a cast putter this year?
It was a cast. It was not milled.
And how often do milled putters win the test over cast putters?
The element with milled putters versus cast putters is inherently the feel aspect. They normally say that milled putters is softer off the face than a cast, but some cases that is true. Like the Mizuno this year, when I rolled the Mizuno, it had the same feel as the forged iron, for instance. Did it perform as well as the Triple Track? No, but it did do well. So it swings and roundabouts, really, but generally, no.
It's true for pretty much any club, but you could have the conversation about where it's not how it's made. It's not, whether it's milled or cast, or in the iron space forged or cast. It's what are the technology benefits, right? It's not the manufacturing process itself as a choice between A or B. It's everything else that goes into the design that dictates whether or not it performs well.
Let's say it all at once. Are milled putters better than cast putters?
No.
Okay, number 4. So we've got this debate here that it's the archer, not the arrow. And let's put this into perspective. Let's call Tiger Woods the archer, and let's call his equipment the arrows. Does it matter what Tiger Woods plays, or is he always going to win all of these majors.
Well, Tiger is notoriously finicky about his equipment, so I think Tiger would probably be the first guy to tell you that the equipment actually does matter.
Yeah.
So that might be the extreme example, but as a general rule, what I would say is probably the less skillful that the archer is, the more important the arrow becomes.
Harry, why don't we use you as an example? When you first got to MyGolfSpy, you didn't tailor your equipment via data. You were an all-American golfer, but you got to MyGolfSpy, and what did you discover?
That I was giving up so many strokes around just by getting the equipment based to my swing and not changing my swing to the equipment.
How much longer off the tee are you now?
Yeah.
Strictly based on, ballpark it based on equipment alone.
40 yards?
So for driver, when I hit my driver well, it's probably about 295 in college, spinning about 3,500 revs. And now I'm averaging about 315 to 320, spinning at about 21 and launching at about 13 degrees-ish. But when I do go after one, I can get it to 335, but then my dispersion goes like, wee.
Yeah. So if we're talking only distance, best for best, 40 yards longer, obviously on average,
around
25, 30 yards longer. So that's 2 to 3 clubs, right? Coming into a par 4 or second shot into a par 5. And, the reality is it's this dichotomous thinking where people want to, they say these things, right, to try to prove or try to take a statement that one's more important than the other, that the golfer's more important or the equipment's more important, and it's always both.
Yeah, you have to find that balance.
Yeah, I've never seen a golfer play golf without equipment, and I've never seen a sandbag just walking down the fairway without a golfer, and so it's always both. And it's too simple to say, oh, it's the player. I could put a broomstick in Tiger's hands and he would putt well with it. Well, yeah, he probably would, but would he putt better with something designed, fit, etc. for him? Of course he would.
Yeah, you hear quite a bit the argument, right? People will be like, yeah, it's not the equipment, just learn how to swing or something like that, right? I love that, just learn how to swing. And so as if there's a right way to swing. And yeah, there are definitely some wrong ways to swing. But the idea of like, yeah, if you just learn to swing, you can play anything. And my pushback on that, I always go to the TaylorMade staff, right? Because they've got Rory and Tiger and Dustin and John Rahm and Jason Day and this list that goes on and on and on. And I would imagine that among those handful of top tier elite best of the best in the world golfers, you wouldn't find a lot of overlap in, for example, the shafts that they're playing, the long drivers, the settings of those drivers, right? So all these things are different configurations for the best of the best. So the idea, clearly being that the equipment makes a difference, even if it's just the fine-tuning aspect. The equipment makes the difference for the very best players in the world. So to think that it wouldn't for average golfers who need every bit of help they can possibly get is patently absurd.
Would you tell your daughter going out for a run, say, hey, just put on dad's shoes, learn how to run? You figure it out, kid. Have a better gait. Have a better stride. You go figure it out. You'd never do that, right? Because it seems so ridiculous. But for whatever reason, we lose all abilities of objectivity when we think about golf equipment.
Okay, number 5. This one's going to be interesting for us because we are the world's biggest advocates for getting fit. However, we also know the realities of the fitting world. So
this is a Facebook comment, right? I think that started this.
Yeah.
So let's break this down a little bit. Getting fit is always better. With caveats?
It's like anything else, right? There's always some sort of disclaimer that you need to attach. And we've talked about this before. Yes, you should get fit for your driver and your fairway woods and your hybrids and your irons and your wedges and your putter too. And while we're at it, get fit for your golf ball. Like that, because
and your shoes.
You hopefully already got fit for your shoes. But we say that with the understanding that not everybody has a true spec or a TXG or Cool Clubs, again, et cetera, nearby. one of the person, I can't remember his name, who left the comment was like, hey, yeah, but it's easy to say go get fit. Tony always says go get fit, but it's not easy. I'm in the New York State Capital District, and whatever. I believe that's what he said. I'm like, well, I'm in the New York State Capital District, and it is tough. And again, it's not the dream scenario where it's brand agnostic. You have the full table of options to choose from. But if you want a wedge fitting, the Titleist rep does the Titleist Thursdays. He can do a wedge fitting. You can get near me.
I have a question here.
Not everywhere.
So you brought this into a question that I've been wondering about fitting from the start. You mentioned a Titleist rep. And my thought here is that if a person is fitting for Titleist, their sole job is to fit them in Titleist clubs, yes? Mm-hmm. So what if you have a golfer that doesn't fit Titleist? So are fitters that are employed by companies fitters or sales reps?
Yes, both of those things, right?
Okay.
And so you have to be comfortable saying, hey, I'm gonna take my chances that getting fit for a Vokey, for example, will put me in a better performance position than buying off the rack for just about any other company, because that's the wedge fitting that's available in my area. But I mean, realistically, like I said, we've got a really good Titleist rep in my area. There are going to be parts of that company who may have a bad Titleist rep or no rep at all, or we think about it where like this world where, hey, yeah, you just drive 15 minutes down the road and you go to a fitter, but we're also aware of the fact there are pockets of the country where you can drive 2 hours down the road and still not get to a good brand agnostic full service fitter. So I get it. It's not an ideal situation. And unfortunately, other than, hey, that's why we built True Golf Fit for the driver, is for guys who can't get fit or didn't want to get fit. But beyond that, I don't have any great answers.
I kind of want to pose this question to any fitters listening, and I know there is one that actually inspired this, so if he's listening, he knows exactly who he is. But what do you do? Say you work for Callaway or Titleist or Ping. What do you do if you know you've got a guy that just doesn't fit in your company? Do you send them elsewhere? Are you honest with them, or do you find the closest thing within your company? What do you think those fitters would say? I'm interested to see if anyone comes in the comments, but
I think it's depending on your moral compass. I think a lot of fitters will be, hey, look, this company doesn't fit your game. Here's one that might fit your game. And I don't think they'd lose anything from that. I think, if anything, they gain a lot more respect and a lot more credibility, because they're saying, all right, this company's probably not best for you, but this company might be as good for you. It's just that's a tough one.
I think it's nice to think that a lot of reps would do what we would maybe consider the right thing and say, geez, this, I know that we need to correct this particular ball flight, and the technology in this driver is a little bit better suited to you to do that. But I think the reality is a lot of these people that are reps for certain companies do believe that they have a club that will fit every golfer. Say, hey, yeah, we have, if you talk to a company, right, talk to any OEM and say, all right, which segment of golfers are you purposely leaving out of your lineup right now? Which are the ones that are going to be better served by another company? I think you'd be hard-pressed to hear a company say, oh, yeah, I am specifically leaving out this segment. We're going to give that one to Ping this year. Oh, no, we're going to give that group to Callaway this year. And so I think they do believe that they have clubs that can fit the vast majority of golfers, and don't feel that they're doing a disservice to the golfer by giving them the best fit they can into the equipment that they have available to them.
And
you do run into some philosophical things too, right? So you mentioned like every company believes they have something for everybody, but I think like Ping doesn't make that ultra lightweight driver, and they do that for philosophical reasons, right? They're trade-offs curves, and to go with a super light head, you're going to give up MOI and forgiveness, and that's part and parcel to the Ping design philosophy. Titleist didn't have that driver before last year. That's where the TS1 came from, right? So there are holes. Whether or not they get acknowledged is a different story. But I mean, we've heard from countless golfers that have said, hey, yeah, no, the fitter I worked with, and sometimes, I've heard about it. Somebody mentioned it with a PXG fitter. I've heard about it from other brands as well, where the fitter couldn't beat a given club, acknowledge that, hey, our lineup for whatever reason doesn't fit you as well as somebody else's, and so you should stick with what you have. Now, that's a lot easier to do if the guy that you're having that conversation with, you've already fit him and you just fit him into a set of irons, a new hybrid and a fairway wood, if you can't sell him a driver for performance reasons, you're probably all right with that. But if the guy comes to you for a 1 hour driver fitting, then I think you're going to work really, really hard. And, it's individually for sure, like Harry said, a moral compass. And part of it may come down to, hey, what's my month look like?
If I made my numbers, right? These are real things.
I also know that there's fitters that don't get paid per sale. They get paid per hour. So in that kind of aspect, they don't have an obligation to push product, even though they work for that company.
For reference, the fitter that inspired this question did say that if he knew that a guy wasn't fitting into his equipment, he had other rep friends that he would send them to and say, hey, I think I might have a guy for you, knowing that they might send somebody else back, so that there was a give and take between the reps. So particular rep that I talked to said, no, we recognize it and we do what we can to help the golfer. But that doesn't mean that everyone is like that.
It really is going to be an individual from rep to rep type of thing. And you hope that most would acknowledge, hey, yeah, you know what, we don't have the right club for you. And whether that's, again, a guy who would legitimately benefit from a super lightweight driver, or a guy who needs, something super, super low spin, things like that. Everybody fits the middle, I think, pretty well. It's just, all right, what happens when we get on these edges, these little niche areas where, quite frankly, there are companies who don't make products there because the market is so small for them. You can't make up the tooling costs and the R&D costs and things like that.
Okay, so we're telling golfers, get fit, but be mindful. Do your research first, right?
That's it. And
all right.
If you can't get fit, I'm sorry, it kind of sucks.
If you can get fit by any manufacturer, go get your numbers. Just go figure out your numbers and see what you need, like specs wise, and then go out and try these other ones that are Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever, and then build them to your specs.
All right, so that was the top 5 golf myths debunked. I think we did a fairly good job bringing reason to all of them. And just like we do every week, we're keeping you updated on everything coming out of the testing facility. This week, the best drivers for specific swing speeds. If your swing speed is below 94 miles an hour, you're in what we call the slow swing speed group. Our data says the Hanma XP1 is the best driver for golfers in this category. It was number 1 in strokes gained. You're a mid-swing speed golfer if your swing speed is between 95 and 105 miles an hour. In 2020, the Cobra King Speed Zone Extreme came out on top as the best driver for mid-swing speeds. It's a top finisher in distance, with results nearly 2 yards longer than the field average. And last but not least, let's break down the best drivers for high swing speeds. The Titleist TS2 ranks number 1 for golfers who swing above 105 miles per hour. It came back as number 1 in strokes gained for this group. For the rest of the results, head to MyGolfSpy.com. Next up, Tony, this one I want to give fully to you. We've got a new section of the website that is launching. So can you give us the lowdown on tour stats?
Yeah, so this is something we've been trying to figure out for a while. MyGolfSpy does not cover the tour. And again, we've covered it. It's because I don't care about the tour and Adam doesn't care about the tour, and that's pretty much the extent of it. But we also know that golfers care about the tour, and so we were like, all right, how can we do this in a way that's unique, it's different, and potentially even fun? And working with Lou Stagner on our driver data and
can you tell us about Lou a little bit?
Yeah, so Lou, if you don't know, Lou Stagner he's rapidly becoming one of the thought leaders in the golf statistical space, if you will. He's a data analytics guy by trade who just happens to be a really kind of passionate golfer as well. And so he's over time, he's kind of delved into the golf stats area. He's started to work with tour players to improve their games as well. And so, he kind of has a lot of insight into tour data and things like that. So he's going to be putting together a series of articles for us so when we talked to Lou, it just kind of clicked, and he had some ideas. I'm like, yeah, this is what we've been looking for, kind of data driven, related to the tour, and there's a way to kind of make this fun and interesting, and just kind of a little different feel to a tour article than you see on most websites. And so, the first one published today. This is idea of, because Bubba made a comment that, playing with some guys is akin to a 1 or 2 stroke penalty. And so that kind of triggered something in Lou's head. And
I would say it's the other way around if I was playing with Bubba.
So but Lou went digging into the data, and sure enough, like, he found guys like say, hey, if you're paired with this guy, the numbers say that a golfer is going to shoot X amount of strokes below his average or X amount of strokes above his average. And the obvious one we looked at, right? What's it like playing with Tiger on a 4th round on Sunday? And sure enough, what everyone has been assuming to be true or saying to be true for years is actually the case. That if you're paired with Tiger on a Sunday, it's a stroke plus penalty. I don't have the actual date in front of me, but it's more than a stroke, right?
Mm-hmm, just a little over 1, yeah. And it's interesting just reading through some of the initial comments and people's responses to this. It's interesting how even when you present it in such a data-driven perspective, literally these are just the numbers. We're taking these
actual numbers, not theoretical.
Just like, okay, you have person A and person B, and what happens when they play 18 holes of golf together. And I think it was Louis Oosthuizen where he had basically the largest negative effect on his playing parts. Louis the Jinx, and guys are like, I've seen Louis. He's an amazing guy. I can't believe you would cast him in this negative light, and people love playing with Louis, and I know that to be true. And this is like, whoa, nobody said Louis was a bad guy.
But doesn't Louis hate golf? Did I hear him say he hate golf once?
I don't know, but it's like,
it's understandable.
This is just what it is. There is absolutely no context or value statements being made around these people or individuals, and we could go through the list of each person, right, and say, okay, now what might be a reason? Like, is there something that could possibly explain this, right? Tiger on a Sunday, okay, we could dive into that.
Intense guy, massive galleries, just the pressure that comes with playing next to Tiger. There are multiple sort of explanations there, and you look at a guy like Louis, and you're like, maybe he's like so fun to play with. He's such a great guy that it's almost disarming, and you lose kind of that focus and intensity. I don't know, right? Just pure speculation, but these are what the numbers are.
Right. It's not like, hey, Louis is a giant dick, and nobody likes to play with him, and therefore now we have numbers to back that up. Like, that's not what it is, That's just, But it is interesting, right? That you do play better or worse relative to how you typically play based on the constellation of the group that you're playing with.
I think it could be one too. Like, I've vibed with guys who, if you're in a tournament and everyone is doing terrible, you kind of fall into that same kind of characteristics too as well. Like, I can't play my best golf because I look around and they're looking for balls, and they're in bunkers and they're blah blah blah, and they're shooting 5 or 6 over after a 9. So it's hard to really get focused in that way. But if on the flip side, if everyone is like a couple under, and you're in sync and you're playing well and you're trying to make birdie, and then hoping they make birdie, it kind of brings you all up. So you play better together. I think that also plays to the effect.
Well, there's your next Lou article, right?
There you go.
That is actually not the next Lou article.
Oh, okay. My strokes gained or lost based on the score of my playing partner, right? So if my playing partner plays better or worse than their average strokes gained, how does that impact me? So if
that'd be interesting too.
If someone has a really good round going, does that have a positive or negative impact on my round?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm excited to see what Lou comes up with.
New for us, different for us, but kind of really cool. So far, the response has been positive. The next one in the pipeline, I think, is really cool, and the one after that is really cool too. And so, while we will have some focus on obviously just tour, and a lot of it will be contained to the tour itself, we're also working on some things that will take some of this tour data and this kind of the tournament environment and make it relevant to the average golfer, the average club golfer.
That's what I was saying. I was saying, like, how how are my stats compared to X on the PGA Tour?
Obviously,
are you the jinx? Yeah.
It could well be, but that's the thing. Like, I would like to find out how that is. Now, obviously, quantifiable. It's kind of different because you're not playing the same course conditions. But still, I would love to see my driver distance, my irons, my dispersion, blah blah blah, compared to the big boys on tour, and see how shit I am.
It's kind of interesting. I bounced it off Lou. I'm like, have you given any thought to the kind of the gambling implications for this and the fantasy sports implications to know, like, hey, if you're paired with a Louis, if your guy's paired with Louis on a first or second round, like, you may want to go in another direction just based on, you're looking at 2 strokes, give or take. So yeah, it's really kind of wild stuff.
Yeah,
and Lou's like really good at digging in and finding like some obscure random thing and pulling it out and making it interesting and fun.
Yeah, because you have a DFS that you run through like a strokes gained player filter prior to, wagering.
Hold on, break that down. A what? Through
so
a what?
DFS like daily fantasy sports, right? So you're doing like DraftKings or whatever. So I'm setting my lineup this week, and it's like, oh man, I got to run that through the Stagner player profile filter and see if that makes any sense.
I needed you to put it in English for me.
There you go. That's a multi-million-dollar company right there. You could build.
Right, Tour Junkies. Tour Junkies. If you're listening, there you go. There's your next filter idea.
There we go. Okay, well, I think readers are really going to like that and are excited to see what's coming down the pipe. But Harry, readers have another chance, and listeners here have a chance to be involved in MyGolfSpy testing. We do something called member testing, and ExPutt is up next. Can you give us the lowdown on what the ExPutt is and where readers and listeners can go to get involved and be part of testing?
Well, you're not putting with your ex.
I love the dad jokes.
Anyway, it's a putt-in simulator, which you can put up in your living room or wherever you have a spare bit of space and link it up with your TV. And then you plant the webcam on a level above the putting mat, and it's reading your stroke type, how many degrees you go into out or out to in, whatever it may be, how fast the ball comes off your putter, loft it comes off your putter, and then you can play. Then you can have some fun with it. You can have a competition with you and your friends. It's just a really fun simulator, and it's not breaking the bank either. So it's one of those ones that if you get to be a tester of these ExPutts, you're in a good one there.
And where do you go to apply to be a tester?
It's on the forum, I believe.
There'll be a link on the front page as well.
Okay.
So you just follow the links and hope you're one of the lucky winners.
Woo. All right, guys. Well, that's all I have for today. Anybody have any other fun tidbits that we need to share before we go?
I had a lot of dad jokes, but apparently those are verboten now.
Yeah, no, we are a dad joke free zone.
Give me one dad joke before we go.
So this is to the guy that invented the number 0.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah, thanks for nothing.
Yeah, that guy. Thanks for nothing. That was good. I appreciate that.
I kind of like it.
Thank you, Harry.
All right, well, that's all we've got today. I think we had a fun one, but thank you for listening. And as always, let us know what you're thinking. We're growing here at No Putts Given, so if you have a chance to leave us a review or subscribe to our page, we certainly appreciate it. It only helps us get better and give you a better show. So until then, we out.